The moment we launched this game, I swear something felt wrong. Not the usual kind of creepy wrong. This was different. Heavier, almost like the screen itself didn't want us looking at it. And if you stick with me, you'll see why the students who played this game should never have clicked start. So here's how it begins. 4 students sitting in a dark dorm room, laughing, joking, passing the controller around. They thought they found just another random indie horror game on some sketchy forum. You know the type: low res graphics, weird VHS filters, maybe a cheap jump scare or two, but the title screen was unsettling. No music, just a flickering yellow hallway, endless. The words "press start" barely visible through static. One of them joked, "This looks like Windows 98. Threw up. Everyone laughed. But when they pressed start, the laughter stopped instantly. The game didn't load into a level. Instead, it just dropped them. No intro, no menu, no tutorial, just silence, and a massive, yellow, buzzing room that stretched on forever. And if you've ever seen the Backrooms, you know exactly what I mean. Stained carpet, walls the color of old mustard, fluorescent lights that hum just a little too loud. At first, they thought it was funny, like a meme level. Oh, cool, we're in the Backrooms, haha. But that buzzing sound, it got louder. And it didn't stop. And when they tried to pause the game, nothing happened. No menu. No escape. They walked forward, expecting maybe a door or a monster, or at least some kind of clue. But there was nothing. Just more and more hallways. The textures were repeating, but not perfectly. One of them said, "Wait, weren't we just here?" Another laughed nervously. "Nah, dude, it's just looping textures." But when they turned around, the hallway behind them was different. Shorter, narrower, like the game was closing in on them. That's when one of the students swore they heard footsteps, not theirs. Someone, or something, was walking with them. And here's the part that freaked them out most. When they all went quiet, leaned in, and turned up the volume, they heard it clear as day. Slow, wet footsteps on the carpet, getting closer, but the game still showed nothing. Just yellow walls, just empty space. And then, right as they turned the corner, everything changed. But I'll get to that in a second. So after hearing those footsteps, the students leaned in closer to the screen. Nobody was laughing anymore. The room was dead silent except for the humming lights and that slow, squishy SHFFT of footsteps on carpet. One of them whispered, "Maybe it's just an ambient sound effect." But then, boom, the screen flickered just for a second. A shape, human, like, standing way down the hall. They all froze. One student swore he saw the outline of a man, tall, impossibly still. But when the static cleared, the hallway was empty again. Now they weren't just playing a game anymore. They were hunting for proof. They decided to keep moving forward, thinking maybe this was a scripted event. But with every turn, the hallways looked wrong. Some carpets had darker stains that weren't there before. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, buzzing so loud it almost felt like static in their heads. And then the game did something strange. Text appeared on the screen. Just 2 words, "Don't stop." The students looked at each other like, "Wait, what is this? A puzzle? A warning?" One of them laughed nervously. "Cool, so we're officially being threatened by Microsoft Paint font. Awesome." But deep down, They knew it meant something more, something dangerous. They picked up the pace in-game, running through hallway after hallway. That's when they heard it again, the footsteps. Only this time they weren't slow. They were running, pounding, closing in. One student panicked, shouting, "Go left, go left." But no matter where they turned, the sound followed. The screen glitched with static, warping the yellow walls like they were melting, and for the first time they heard something breathe, ragged, heavy, right behind them. The player slammed the stick forward, sprinting, but the game seemed to be slowing them down, almost like it wanted them caught. And just when they thought they'd lost it, just when the hallway stretched into silence again, they turned the corner and froze, because standing there was a door. The first door they'd seen in the entire game. They had no choice but to go through it. But trust me, what waited on the other side made everything so far look like child's play. They stared at the door like it wasn't even part of the game. It was different, wooden, old, completely out of place against the endless yellow walls. One student muttered, "Dude, don't open it. It's a trap." But curiosity won. It always does. The player slowly pushed forward on the controller, and the door creaked open. The buzzing hum of fluorescent lights cut out, instantly replaced by a low, distant drip. The screen went black for a second, and when it faded back in, they weren't in the yellow halls anymore. They found themselves in what looked like a massive boiler room. Rusty pipes stretched across the ceiling, dripping with water. The air felt heavier, darker, almost wet. The carpet was gone, replaced by concrete floors slick with grime. And here's the creepy part. The controller vibrated just faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. One of the students whispered, "This isn't in the original Backrooms lore, is it?" And that's when they realized this wasn't just a fan game. The levels weren't following any rules they knew. This was something else. They moved forward, every step echoing against the dripping pipes. Then they saw it. A shadow moved across the far wall, long, twisted, too thin to be human. The students froze. Nobody breathed. And then writing appeared on the wall. Slowly, as if burned into the concrete, "Keep running." The player backed up, shaking, saying, "Nope, nope, nope, I'm done." But the others convinced him to keep going, laughing nervously, even though their voices were cracking. That's when the sound returned. Not footsteps this time, but something dragging. Something scraping against the wet concrete, pulling itself closer. The camera shook, the screen distorted. And from the corner of the boiler room, they finally saw it, not clearly, just a glimpse, a pale, distorted figure crawling unnaturally fast across the floor, its limbs bending the wrong way, its face blurred, static eating away at its features. The students screamed, scrambling to run. But in this level, running only made it worse. Because with every step they took, the thing got closer. And that's when the game hit them with its cruelest trick yet. They bolted through the boiler room, screaming over each other as the pale figure crawled after them. The controller was rattling like it was alive, and the footsteps, no, not footsteps. The skittering was right behind them. The screen warped every few seconds, showing glimpses of the thing's face, or what was left of it. A wide, gaping smile stretched across blurred features, hollow eye sockets that stared straight into the camera. One of the students shouted, "Dude, I can't, it's catching up." But here's the insane part. No matter how fast they ran, the figure stayed the same distance behind them, always just out of reach, almost like it wanted them to keep running. And then it happened. The game froze mid-run. The students sat there in silence, controllers in their hands, staring at a still frame of their character sprinting forward. The humming of the pipes stopped. The dripping water stopped. Everything dead silent. For a full 10 seconds, nothing. And then text appeared, not typed in neatly. It scratched itself across the screen, letter by letter, like claws carving into the monitor. "Stop running!" The students yelled, "What do we do?" But before anyone could answer, the game unfroze, and their character was standing completely still. They weren't in control anymore. The screen zoomed in slightly, the hallway ahead blurred, and slowly the camera began to turn, by itself. One of them slammed the joystick, mashing every button, but it didn't matter. The game wanted them to look behind. And when the camera finally turned, there it was. The pale figure was standing upright now, right in front of the screen. Its body twitching, limbs too long, head tilted like it was listening. And then it leaned forward. Its face pressed against the camera, static flooding the screen until only its teeth showed jagged, broken, real. The students dropped the controller. I'm not kidding. They actually threw it across the room. But here's the part that terrified them most. The controller kept vibrating on the floor, even though no one was touching it. And on the screen, the entity whispered 2 words, clear as day, like it was speaking through the speakers directly into the room. Next level. The screen went black. And when it faded back in, they weren't in the game anymore. At least, it didn't look like the game. When the screen faded back in, it didn't look like the game anymore. The graphics weren't pixelated, they weren't grainy, they were real. The room on the screen looked exactly like their dorm room. Same walls, same posters, same pizza box sitting on the table. One of the students muttered, "Nah, no way. This is just a trick." But then the camera inside the game started moving, slowly panning toward the TV, as if something inside the game was watching them back. And when the in-game camera turned to face the student's couch, there they were, 4 little shadowy outlines, sitting exactly where they were in real life. They all jumped up at once, yelling, swearing, pacing around the room. The one holding the controller dropped it, and here's the worst part. When it hit the floor, the version of him inside the game dropped it too, perfectly mirrored. The buzzing sound from the fluorescent lights returned, but it wasn't coming from the TV anymore. It was humming in. The dorm room overhead, one student flicked the actual light switch. Nothing changed. The room was locked in that same ugly yellow glow. And then the figure appeared again, not on the screen this time, in the corner of the room. The students froze, their eyes darting between the TV and the dark corner by the door. For a second, it looked empty, just shadows, but then the shadows moved, slowly stretching, rising, twisting into that pale, faceless figure. One of them whispered, trembling, "Dude, this isn't a game anymore." TV flickered violently, text flashing in bright yellow letters over and over. "You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be here." The entity took one step forward, carpet squelching, heavy breathing filling the room. The students screamed, scrambling toward the door. But the door wouldn't open. The knob rattled, but it was stuck. And on the TV screen, Their in-game selves were doing the same thing, pulling, clawing at the door that wouldn't budge, and then lights in the dorm went out. The only thing left was the TV glow, the static, and in that moment they knew there was only one level left. The dorm room was pitch black now. The only light came from the TV, and what was on the TV was no longer just a game. The students' shadows inside the screen looked frantic, clawing at the door, screaming with faces twisted in panic. Then click, the lights in the hallway outside the dorm flickered. Faint buzzing seeped through the walls, the same fluorescent hum from the back rooms. One of the students whispered, "That's not coming from the game anymore." And the second he said it, the TV flickered to black. Then text appeared, bold and sharp, filling the entire screen. Level 0 complete. A slow creak echoed from inside the room. Not from the TV, from the dorm itself. Another door, one that hadn't been there before, old, wooden, exactly like the one they had opened in the game. Nobody wanted to touch it. They argued. They begged each other to stop. But then the controller vibrated on the floor again, pulsing faster and faster, almost like a heartbeat. The TV whispered in a voice broken with static, "Enter." And before they could stop him, one of the students stepped forward and pulled the door open. What they saw wasn't another hallway. It wasn't even a room. It was yellow, endless yellow. The backrooms themselves, stretching out into infinity. The students screamed, shoving the door closed, but when they turned around, the dorm was gone. The couch, the posters, the pizza box, all gone, replaced by buzzing lights, stained carpet. They weren't in their dorm anymore. They were inside the game. The camera shook as if someone else was holding it now, filming them from behind. And in the distance, dozens of pale, faceless figures were slowly crawling out of the walls, out of the floor, each one twitching toward them. The TV, if it even was a TV anymore, flashed one final message before the screen cut to static. Level 1 unlocked. And that's where the footage ends. The students who accidentally discovered the backrooms, yeah, let's just say they never beat the game. At least not in the way you'd hope. So if you ever find a random VHS-style horror game online with no title screen, no music, just a single yellow hallway, maybe don't press start. Because once you enter the backrooms don't let you out. Safe to say, we're never touching that game at night again. If you enjoyed this nightmare, smash that like button, subscribe for more creepy stories, and let me know in the comments. Would you open that door? Or nope out immediately? Because trust me, sometimes curiosity doesn't just kill the cat. It traps you in the walls forever.